My name is Mara Vale, 26 years old. I was setting the table for Thanksgiving like I always did. Plates, glasses, while everyone else lounged around like guests in a hotel, and I moved through the kitchen like staff. The linens smelled faintly of orange oil from the furniture polish, and the light from the dining room fell in yellow squares across the floor like stage marks. It had become routine. No one thanked me anymore. I did the work. They took it for granted. This year, I told myself to stay quiet and just get through dinner. My sister was on the couch, fake laughing, at something on her phone, her thumbs moving like a magician's hands. My brother was yelling at the TV because his team was losing, throwing commentary like darts. My dad cracked open another beer before noon, the hiss of the can a kind of family anthem. My mom was the only one actually helping, quietly sliding the turkey into the oven with a soft grunt and a flinch when the rack squealed. I remember thinking, this will be the last year I let myself do this. I didn't know I was right. I didn't see my dad holding his phone. He must have been filming me from the dining room while I was fixing the centerpieces. 3 candles, a mishmash of harvest leaves, 2 ceramic turkeys that had belonged to my grandmother. I wasn't doing anything special, just lining up the plates evenly, because God forbid someone else take responsibility for how things looked. On the hutch behind me, a single drawer stuck half open, the one where I kept old birthday cards and a tiny stack of letters tied with twine. I noticed it, made a mental note to close it later, and moved on. I didn't realize that drawer would matter. I didn't notice the video until dinner was already on the table. I was sitting across from my cousin Lisa, who had a way of seeing what others pretended not to. She leaned in, breath warm with clove gum, and whispered, "Have you seen Facebook?" My phone buzzed against the wood, rattling a spoon. A notification lit up. 14 seconds. Me, folding napkins and arranging forks. The caption, in my dad's voice, I could hear even when I wasn't reading it. "Look at this failure. She was always a servant." Below it, my brother had already commented, "Amo, she still thinks she's doing something." Then my sister, no lie though, followed by 3 crying, laughing faces and a little sparkly heart, because cruelty arrives best dressed as a joke. They were laughing across the table like it was an inside joke, like I wasn't sitting right there with the turkey steam fogging my glasses and the gravy boat leaving a ring on the runner I ironed. I watched my dad tilt his can and smirk at something only he found clever. I watched my brother dig into the mashed potatoes with the serving spoon like he'd done me a favor. I heard the brittle squeak in my mother's voice when she said, "Let's pray," and nobody bothered to bow their head. I didn't say anything, not a word. I stood, pushed my chair in so quietly it sounded like a goodbye, took my purse from the back of it, and walked out. The cold air caught me on the porch like a hand on my chest. The neighbor's wind chime made a sound like glass giving up. No one followed. My shoes found the sidewalk and then the corner of Eastwood and Fifth as if they'd been rehearsing this exit for years. I dialed my aunt, the one who had always said my name like it belonged to me, and she answered on the second ring. "I'll come," she said before I even asked. She left the dinner, too. "Had enough of watching them treat you like trash," she added, like she was dropping a plate and letting it shatter. Her car smelled like peppermint and hand sanitizer. We drove without talking. I stared out the window at houses lit like postcards, families framed by windows and little tableaus of warmth. It's funny how you can feel cold while carrying heat, like your anger is a pocket warmer you refuse to let go of. That night, I lay on her guest bed fully dressed, my phone face down beside me, ceiling fan turning in lazy, indifferent circles. I didn't sleep. The thing about being the family punchline is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's slow. It builds. You let one thing go, then another, and before you know it, your dad is posting you online like a joke, and your siblings are chiming in like it's their part-time job. You start to believe that your worth is counted in chores completed and crises absorbed. Your hands learn to move first and ask later. Servant hands. I looked at mine in the dim light, dry knuckles, tiny burn scar from a panhandle, and wondered when they had stopped feeling like mine. What they didn't know was that I'd been saving quietly, working 50-plus hours a week, not going out, not buying new clothes, skipping vacations, letting my sister borrow money without ever paying it back. I had put away over $21,000 by telling myself that discipline was a door I could open when I was ready. They thought I was dumb, broke, weak. That illusion cracked like ice in a glass the next morning. At 8:12 a.m., my sister texted, Not, are you okay? Not, where are you? Just, why can't I withdraw $2,000 from your account? She meant the joint account I'd once opened in a moment of misguided trust. I called her. She answered with a sigh designed to make me feel like paperwork. It's closed, I said. Everything's moved. Silence, then a scoff like a shovel scraping concrete. You are so selfish. Stop using that word like a mirror, I said, and surprised myself by how calm I sounded. She flipped. 6 messages in a row. Selfish, manipulative, bitter. I need it for urgent stuff. Urgent meaning. Concert tickets, a pre-order for a scam skincare line, and a pastel suitcase she wanted for a weekend trip she'd invited herself to. I watched the bubbles come and go like a fish surfacing in an aquarium. Then I turned the phone over and let it buzz on the nightstand until it wore itself out. By noon, my dad messaged me. Not to apologize, not to check in, just, you've always been dramatic. Grow up. It was the kind of message that once would have sent me scrambling to minimize myself, to justify, to make a spreadsheet of my reasons. Instead, something rectangular and solid slid into place inside me, like a bolt thrown on a door I hadn't known was ajar. I didn't answer any of them. My aunt made waffles and coffee, and we sat on her back porch for an hour without talking. The morning sun laid a track of light across the lawn. The neighbor's dog coughed out a single bark and then reconsidered. She wasn't the type to press. She cut a square of waffle, dipped it into syrup, and said gently, "Whatever you decide, make sure it's not out of guilt." Guilt, in our house, was an heirloom. It came down the line wrapped in tissue paper, offered on holidays when conversation ran dry. I nodded. My phone buzzed 5 times during breakfast. I didn't check it. Around noon, I opened my phone. Not because I cared what they had to say. I wanted to confirm what I already suspected. When you stop serving, someone calls you ungrateful. When you stop paying, someone calls you cruel. A new group chat had appeared with my siblings. I never asked to be added. There it was. First message, a photo of my room, drawers yanked out, mirror spider-webbed, makeup crushed like chalk, books on the floor like trash. My brother's caption, cleaning day. A second message right under it. Should have taken your crap with you. I stared until the pixels blurred. Another message from my sister. Don't worry, we saved your trash notebooks, LOL. I had once bought her a cake with sugared violets and carried it like a crown to her table. I had once ironed her graduation dress while she pretended to be late. The part of me that cried stayed very still. Another part, smaller, sharper, sat up. I called my cousin Mark, who lived a couple blocks away from my parents. He'd always been neutral, hovering at the edge of family fireworks with a fire extinguisher and a shrug. Can you check? I asked. See if anything's salvageable? On my way, he said, no questions. 15 minutes later, he texted. A photo of my laptop, passport, and a handful of documents buckled in on the front seat of his car like small, nervous passengers. That's all I could grab, he wrote. They went through every drawer. Opened the little safe. Your sister joked about burning your journals. I didn't reply. I took my aunt's spare throw blanket and wrapped it around my shoulders like armor. The house felt safe, like a harbor where you still keep your boots on. My mom called that evening. Her voice was low and slow, as if the words had to push past something. I didn't know they were going to do it, she said. I tried to stop them. Your father said it was time to teach you a lesson. She apologized like glue could reassemble glass. I didn't yell. I learned that my silence had more weight than my arguments. She breathed into that quiet for a while and then hung up, and something between us, thread, wire, vein, thinned. The next morning, I moved from my aunt's to my uncle and aunt's house on the other side of town. Bigger, quieter, a guest room with its own entrance and a lock that clicked in a way I trusted. They didn't ask for rent. My uncle said, "We'll figure that out later. For now, you rest." The word rest felt foreign in my mouth, like a piece of candy you didn't expect to like. That evening, over stew and soft bread, he asked if I was still thinking about getting an apartment. I said yes. I had already looked at a studio near the bus line. He glanced at my aunt, then back at me. "You're not wasting money on rent," he said. "Not yet. Not while you're still rebuilding." He poured himself a finger of wine and added, almost casually, "You know your dad still owes me $6,000. I blinked, throat tight, spoon halfway to my mouth. He told me about the year their roof caved, how my dad begged for a loan, promised to repay in 6 months. Almost 4 years now, not a cent repaid. I was going to remind him after the holidays, my uncle said. But now? He raised his glass and let the light catch it. Consider that debt forgiven, in the worst way. He set the glass down. Let him feel what it's like to be cut off. In that moment, I realized this was bigger than me. I wasn't just walking away from a toxic house. The ground was shifting under all of us. My dad, my sister, my brother, they didn't know it yet, but they hadn't just lost their servant. They had loosened the cornerstone. By midnight, the porch was cold enough to make the breath show. I stepped outside and watched the streetlights turn the asphalt into a quiet river. The phone in my pocket felt heavy, a stone I could throw or keep. I turned it off and put it on the table inside. Then I washed my hands, slow and deliberate, until the hot water ran out and the skin went pink. Servant hands, I told myself, looking at the foam slide away. Not anymore. I wasn't just angry. I was done. The silence in their house must have felt foreign by Sunday morning. No clanging pans, no footsteps rushing through the hallway, no one asking if anyone needed anything. Wasn't there, and for the first time in years, no one was picking up the pieces. Mara didn't answer a single message. She turned off notifications and let the quiet wrap around her like a second skin. Her aunt made waffles again and talked about her garden instead of the chaos. The smell of syrup filled the kitchen, but Mara couldn't taste anything. She was still thinking about the photos from the night before, the group chat, the mirror shattered. Her room, the only place that had ever been hers, now looked like a crime scene. I'll check, Mark said on the phone when she finally told him. Just tell me what to look for. Anything with my name on it, she whispered. Documents, laptop, maybe the small blue folder in the top drawer. Mark's voice turned firm. Stay put. Don't go there. The line went dead before she could respond. 15 minutes later, he texted a photo. Her laptop, passport, and a handful of papers laid neatly on the passenger seat of his car. Beneath it, a message. That's all I could save. Then another. They went through every drawer, even the safe. Your sister joked about burning your journals. Mara just stared at the screen. Her throat was tight, her fingers numb. Her aunt came in quietly and set a cup of coffee beside her. You don't have to go back, she said simply. That night, her mother called. Mara almost let it ring out, but something in her chest said answer. The voice on the other end was trembling. I didn't know they were going to do that, her mom said, words spilling fast. I tried to stop them. Your father said it was time to teach you a lesson. Mara's silence was heavy, deliberate. I didn't, her mother started, but her voice cracked. He just thinks, you've forgotten where you came from. Mara's reply was almost a whisper. If where I came from means being their joke, then maybe forgetting isn't the worst thing. There was a long pause. Then her mother said, I'm sorry, like the word might build a bridge across a canyon. But the bridge was gone. The next morning, Mara packed her things again. Her aunt hugged her tight, slipping a note into her hand that read, Rest first, rage later. She didn't cry until she got in the car. Her uncle's house was across town, a quiet neighborhood with maples that bent toward each other like confidants. The guest room smelled of cedar and detergent. The first night she slept there, she dreamed she was still setting the table, but when she looked up, all the chairs were empty. At dinner the next evening, her uncle said, You're not paying rent yet, not until you get your footing. She tried to protest, but he waved her off. We'll figure that out later. For now, you breathe. The word breathe sounded strange, like something she'd forgotten how to do. Later that night, over a glass of red wine, he looked at her carefully and said, You know your dad still owes me $6,000. Mara blinked. He what? He nodded, leaning back in his chair. When the roof collapsed 3 winters ago, he begged for a loan, promised to pay it back in 6 months. That was 4 years ago. Her aunt's jaw tightened. He had money for beer, she muttered. Her uncle took another sip, eyes thoughtful. I was going to remind him after the holidays, but after what he did to you. He set the glass down and smiled grimly. I'm calling that debt forgiven, not in a kind way. Let him feel what it's like to be cut off. For the first time in days, Mara almost smiled. It wasn't joy, it was something colder, the realization that her father's control was cracking from the edges. That night, she sat on the porch again, the folded napkin Mark had found beside her. She didn't know why she kept it. Maybe as proof that she once tried, that she once cared enough to line up every plate straight. Her phone buzzed again. Her sister. You're really doing this, making everyone hate us? Mara typed one word. No, you're doing that yourself. Then she turned her phone off and placed it face down on the table beside the napkin. She didn't know it yet, but the power had already shifted. By Monday morning, rumors had started to ripple quietly through the family. Her aunt from the other side called to ask what happened. Her uncle received a text from an old friend of her father's. He's been in a mood. Says you turned the family against him. He did that all by himself, her uncle said, shaking his head. Mara spent the afternoon cleaning the guest room, not because she was asked to, but because she needed to reclaim the act. The motion of folding sheets, wiping surfaces, organizing drawers, it was hers again. Not service, choice. That evening, her uncle handed her an envelope. This came for you, delivered to my mailbox, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, her father's handwriting. The letters pressed hard into the page as if anger itself had weight. You think you're better than us, it began. Always did. You act like a victim, but you made it easy to ignore you. Your sister has problems, but you never helped. You just judged. You made everyone feel small. Congratulations. You got what you wanted. Distance. At the bottom, you're still my daughter, whether you like it or not. Mara read it twice, then folded it carefully. He's not apologizing, she said quietly. Her uncle sighed. He doesn't know how. But in the dim light of the porch, with the letter folded neatly between her fingers, Mara knew what it really was. Not an apology, but a confession. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel smaller because of his words. She felt free. Tuesday morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds in gold stripes, painting Mara's hands as she poured coffee. She hadn't checked her phone yet, and for the first time in days, she didn't dread it. The world outside her father's orbit felt unnervingly calm, too calm, like the air before a thunderstorm. Her uncle was at the kitchen table, reading the paper. You made the news, he said, folding it over. What? He turned the page around. A headline on a local blog read, Contractor under fire after viral Thanksgiving video mocking daughter. A blurry screenshot of her father's Facebook post sat beneath it. Mara stared at it. I didn't even share it. You didn't have to, her uncle said. Someone at his job must have. That afternoon, an email arrived from her father's boss. Polite, distant. Wanted to check in and ask if you're okay. No judgment. No gossip. Just a small, professional wound sent directly to her father's pride. Mara didn't reply. She didn't need to. Her silence was working harder than any speech could. Later that day, Mark called. His voice was cautious. You should probably see this for yourself, he said. See what? He's been writing letters. Like actual letters. I saw him at the kitchen table this morning, stacks of envelopes beside him. One of them had your name on it. He slipped it under my windshield wiper before I left. Mark brought it over an hour later. The envelope was thick, hand-addressed in her father's sharp block letters. Mara held it in her lap like it might hiss if opened too quickly. Inside were 4 folded pages and 2 photographs, one of her as a newborn, her mother holding her, eyes glassy with exhaustion, the other from a camping trip when Mara was 11, her father's arm slung around her shoulder, both of them laughing at something out of frame. She stared at those pictures for a long time before reading the first page. You were never easy to understand, it began. Always acted like you were better than the rest of us. I'm not saying we were right, but you made it easy to ignore you. The next line made her stomach twist. Your sister has problems. We all know it. She uses people. She used you. You let her. Then the tone changed. His handwriting grew tighter. I took out a small loan 5 years ago. Used your name. I was going to pay it off before you ever noticed. It wasn't enough to matter. I didn't have a choice. Mara froze. The paper trembled in her hands. When she looked up, her uncle was already watching her. What is it? He used my name, she said softly, for a loan. Her uncle frowned, took the page, and read it twice. Then he reached for his laptop. We're checking your credit report, now. Minutes later, the screen filled with rows of numbers. 2 open credit cards Mara didn't recognize. One with a $2,400 balance. Another closed account with a missed payment from 3 years ago. Her uncle exhaled through his teeth. He actually did it. Mara stared at the monitor. The numbers blurred into static. Her father hadn't just mocked her. He had stolen her name, her future, her clean slate. She sat back, silent. The hum of the refrigerator sounded louder now, like the house itself was reacting. Her uncle stood abruptly and left the room. She heard him speaking in low, clipped tones in the next room, words like reporting and fraud and documentation. When he returned, his face was set. "We're filing this today. You're not letting this slide." Mara nodded, though her body felt detached, as if someone else was moving her. She thought of the Thanksgiving video, the laughter, the broken mirror, the napkin folded like a soldier at attention, and realized it had all been leading here. That evening, her phone buzzed again, a new message from her mother. "There's something in your room you need to see. I didn't let them touch it." Mara hesitated. Her first instinct was to delete it, but curiosity, sharp, quiet, dangerous, crept in. She texted Mark, "Can you check again?" He didn't ask why. The next morning, he sent a photo, a dusty shoebox pulled from under her old bed, her name written in black marker across the lid. Inside were old greeting cards, torn receipts, and a letter she'd written to herself at 18. A list of dreams so naive it hurt to read. Beneath it all was a worn leather bank book. Her mother had opened an account in her name when she was 14, making tiny deposits, $20 here, $50 there. By the time Mara turned 21, the balance was over $3,000. She'd never seen a cent. 2 weeks after her 21st birthday, her father drained it. "He thought you knew," Mark said quietly over the phone. "He thought you spent it." Mara sat on the edge of the bed, the bank book open on her lap, the ink faded to a ghostly gray. Every entry, every withdrawal was a breadcrumb trail of betrayal. He hadn't just disrespected her, he'd stolen from her, methodically, without guilt. That night, she couldn't eat. Her aunt made soup, her uncle offered wine, but Mara just sat at the kitchen table, staring at her hands. Once they had been servant hands, folding napkins, scrubbing floors, holding families together. Now they were witness hands. "I'll fix this," her uncle said. "Legally, properly. He won't get away with it." Mara shook her head slowly. "I don't want revenge." "Then what do you want?" "Proof," she said. "Proof that I'm not crazy." The next morning, she and her uncle spent hours on the phone with credit agencies, freezing reports, filing disputes, documenting every fraudulent account. Each time she gave her full name, it felt like she was taking it back, inch by inch. By sunset, the house was quiet. On the kitchen counter sat the bank book, the printed credit report, and her father's letter, all laid out like exhibits in a trial that hadn't started yet. She gathered them into a folder, wrote one word across the front in black marker: evidence. As she set it aside, she noticed the 2 photos from the envelope still lying on the table, the baby picture and the camping shot. She stared at the younger versions of herself and whispered, "You didn't deserve this." Then she slid them into the folder too, because even memories could be evidence. The next morning, the sky was gray and low, like a lid pressed over the town. Mara sat at the kitchen counter with a mug of coffee gone cold, staring at the folder labeled evidence. Her uncle walked in, buttoning his jacket. "We're going to see someone today," he said. "Who?" "An attorney. My coworker recommended her." The word attorney made Mara's stomach knot. It felt too official, too sharp. Is that really necessary? Her uncle met her eyes. After what he did, yes. The office was in a quiet building downtown. Pale blue walls, a single plant dying in the corner, and a receptionist who smiled like she'd seen too many people holding broken things. The lawyer herself was composed. Glasses, steady voice, eyes that missed nothing. Mara placed the folder on her desk. The woman flipped through it, page by page. The letters, the credit reports, the bank book, the photos. When she finally looked up, she said, "He's committed multiple federal crimes, identity theft, fraud, possibly embezzlement if he used any of it for business expenses." Mara's throat went dry. "So what do I do?" "You decide if you want to press charges," the lawyer said. "We can start right now." Mara stared at the papers, her father's handwriting, still denting the page from where he'd pressed too hard. "Not yet," she said quietly. "I just want him to know I could." The lawyer nodded, understanding. "Then we make it official enough to scare him, but not enough to destroy you." They spent 2 hours filing reports, setting up fraud alerts, notarizing documents. Each signature felt like an unspoken sentence. "You don't own me anymore." When Mara stepped outside, the air smelled of rain. She inhaled deeply. For the first time in weeks, she felt something close to peace, until a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. It was her mother's old sedan, the one with the dented side door and a rosary dangling from the mirror. Her mother got out holding a grocery bag. "Mara," she said, voice thin as smoke, "I needed to see you." Mara's uncle started to step forward, but she raised a hand. It's fine. Her mother's eyes were red. She thrust the grocery bag into Mara's arms. I grabbed what I could, she said quickly, before he could burn it. Inside were photographs, certificates, a USB drive, and at the bottom, Mara's old high school journal, the one she thought had been destroyed. He wanted to burn it, her mother repeated, trembling. Mara's fingers tightened around the bag. Why are you really here? Her mother's voice cracked. I'm leaving him. The words hung there, suspended. You're what? I met with a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. She wiped at her eyes. I should have done it years ago. Mara stared at her, searching for the truth. And you expect me to believe this isn't just another performance? Her mother shook her head. No, there's more. She hesitated, then pulled out her phone. You need to see this. On the screen were screenshots of bank transfers, thousands of dollars sent to her father from various relatives. He told them you were sick, she whispered. Said you needed help with tuition, that you were too embarrassed to ask yourself. Mara blinked. You're saying he borrowed money in my name? Her mother nodded, crying now. From your cousin's father, from my sister, even from Aunt Helen. She lives on Social Security, Mara. He told each of them not to tell you. Mara felt the air leave her lungs. How long? 6 months, her mother said. All within 6 months. Something inside Mara went still. She wanted to feel anger, but there was only a cold, hollow space where love used to live. Her mother reached out. I believed him for too long, she said, but I can't anymore. Mara stepped back. Then don't, but don't expect me to catch you when you fall. Her mother broke down completely, tears running in streaks down her cheeks. Mara watched, unmoving. For years, she had been the one holding everyone up. Not this time. When her mother finally drove away, the bag still heavy in Mara's arms, she didn't look back. That evening, she spread everything across her uncle's dining table. The receipts, the letters, the bank reports, the screenshots. Her cousin Mark joined them quietly, listening as she explained. When she finished, he left the room and returned with an envelope. He set it in front of her. We've been saving this for months, he said, just in case you needed it. Inside was $1,500 in cash. Mara looked up, eyes stinging. Why? Because we always knew something wasn't right, he said, and because you deserve a head start. She didn't touch the money that night. She just whispered, thank you. Later, she stayed up organizing everything. Credit reports, photos, text screenshots, even the message from her father's boss. She placed them all into a new folder and wrote 5 words across the front in thick black marker. You don't own me anymore. The next morning, she drove to her parents' house. The driveway was empty, blinds drawn. The air smelled of rain-soaked wood and gasoline. She walked up to the mailbox, slid the folder inside, and closed the metal flap. No note, no explanation, just silence. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the house that had once been her entire world. The paint was peeling on the porch. The front door hung slightly off its hinges. It looked smaller than she remembered. When she finally turned away, she didn't feel triumphant. She didn't even feel angry. She just felt done. Like she'd walked out of a prison she hadn't realized she'd been living in. And no one came running after her. Because deep down they knew. They had built the walls themselves. 2 weeks passed. No calls, no messages, no sudden apologies wrapped in guilt. Just silence. Deep, heavy silence that felt both foreign and freeing. At first it unnerved Mara. She kept expecting a storm, a Facebook rant from her dad, a sarcastic text from her sister, some half-hearted apology from her mother, but nothing came. The house that once hummed with noise, with chaos, was now a void that no one dared to fill. In that silence, Mara found herself again. Her uncle drove her to meet with the attorney once more. They finalized paperwork to report the identity theft, froze her credit, and flagged the fraudulent accounts. The lawyer asked one question before filing the final forms. Are you doing this for justice or closure? Mara thought for a moment. Both, she said. Then, after a pause, but mostly so I can breathe. The lawyer smiled softly. Then this is the right choice. As the documents were stamped, something clicked inside her, a final lock undone. The following week settled into a rhythm she'd almost forgotten could exist. Mornings began with sunlight spilling through clean curtains, not with shouting or slammed doors. Her aunt made coffee, her uncle read the newspaper. No one criticized how she stirred sugar into her mug. No one demanded anything. She found part-time work at a small office through her aunt's friend. Clerical tasks, quiet hours, the hum of printers instead of the buzz of insults. Each paycheck, though modest, felt sacred. Her savings began to grow again. The 21,000 she had once hoarded out of fear became nearly 30. And with every dollar, the guilt that used to choke her loosened its grip. Then one afternoon, her phone lit up with a single message. From Ethan, brother. Can we meet? Mara stared at it. If it had come from anyone else, she would have blocked the number, but something, curiosity, maybe closure, made her type back. Tomorrow noon, diner off Elm Street. The next day, she arrived early. The diner smelled like coffee and old vinyl. She chose a booth in the back, where the light fell in soft lines across the table. When her brother walked in, she barely recognized him. His hoodie hung loose, his posture slumped. He looked small. He didn't say hi, just slid into the booth and muttered, "Dad's unraveling." Mara didn't respond. "He drinks all the time now," he continued. "Missed work, got written up. Mom filed for divorce and moved near Aunt Carol. Took whatever money she could find. He didn't fight it." Mara watched him, calm but distant. Then he said, "He thinks you're going to press charges." "Maybe I am," she said, sipping her coffee. Her brother's eyes darted up. "And Candace, she tried to apply for another credit card. In your name again." Mara froze. After all that? She didn't know the accounts were frozen, got flagged instantly. She freaked out and disappeared. Blocked everyone. "She told me you ruined her life." Mara let out a quiet laugh. "Funny, she said the same thing when I stopped paying for hers." He looked down, embarrassed. "I used to think you were dramatic," he said finally, "but I was just blind. I believed him because it was easier." He didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't reach across the table. He just said, "I was wrong." They sat there for an hour, two people with the same blood but different definitions of love. When the check came, Mara paid it without comment. At the door, she turned to him and said softly, "Don't speak for me again. Ever." He nodded. "I won't." Then he walked one way, and she walked the other. Back home, her uncle was sitting at the kitchen table with his reading glasses low on his nose. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Civil," Mara said. He nodded once. "That's enough." Then he set down his paper and added, "You're not going anywhere yet. Stay through the spring. Save more. Don't rush, just to prove you can." She felt her throat tighten. "Why are you being so kind?" "Because you deserve to know what kindness feels like without strings." That night, Mara stood by her window, watching the reflection of streetlights ripple across the glass. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She was still. Weeks turned into a month. The official fraud report triggered a background check at her father's company. He lost his job quietly. No one called her to plead mercy. Her sister stayed gone. Her mother sent one message through an aunt. "I'm starting over. I don't expect forgiveness." Mara didn't reply. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need closure. She had peace. By the end of spring, her savings reached 30,000. She toured a small apartment near the river, white walls, sunlight on the floor, enough space for a desk and a second-hand sofa. When she told her uncle, he smiled. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Mara. Move when you want to, not when you think you should." She smiled back. "I think I finally want to." A week later, she moved in. Her new apartment smelled faintly of paint and fresh beginnings. The first thing she unpacked was a single folded napkin, the one Mark had found in the ruins of her old room. She placed it carefully in the center of her new kitchen table. It wasn't a reminder of servitude anymore. It was a symbol of survival. As sunlight poured through the window, she whispered to the empty room, "They thought I was the servant." Then, smiling faintly, she added, "But I was the foundation." And this time no one could take that from her.